Designer note subject 63. Omega here, Omega there. We don't have to remind you how much of a publicity machine Omega is. Much of the publicity generated by Omega is through their reissues, tribute pieces, and limited editions. This year, the Silver Snoopy topped Omega's hype generators with its clever gimmick at the caseback. But there is a better, more special homage that slipped under our Snoopy sniffing noses that's now also getting hyped up. The Omega Speedmaster Caliber 321 Model 311.30.40.30.01.001. Like, comment, and subscribe for content you'd like to see next. Follow us at Instagram at DesignAtelieraRuba for behind the scenes content. Email us at designatelierviewer@gmail.com. We're of course talking about the Ed White, named after the original Speedmaster in space worn by Ed White, the astronaut. The dimensions are a bit smaller than the usual moon watches we've grown to love. The case diameter is 39.7 millimeters. This is mainly due to the lack of crown and pusher guards seen on the latter generations of Speedmasters. Case thickness is about 14 millimeters that accommodates the chronograph movement inside and the sapphire crystals that's used both on the dial and case back side of the watch. We are treated with the straight lugs here with a gap of 19 millimeters. We also have a tapering bracelet that accomplishes two things. With a long tapering profile, it creates a narrow, streamlined feel to the watch. However, this also hides the blocky nature of the shapes within the design. The straight center links is a functional decision that Omega made to provide the least bending and sturdy backbone for the bracelet. The bezel that houses the tachymeter makes up the case dimensions here with 39.7 millimeters, unlike the other moon watches that have the lyre lugs and crown guards that significantly increases the dimensions. On its own, it's a well-built chronograph with the right proportions and classic personality. But that's not what makes this timepiece special. This new Speedmaster is honoring a generation of Speedmasters that has been beloved already, even before NASA started commissioning Omega as an official contractor. The first two generations of the Speedmaster used the caliber 321, the CK2915 and the CK2998 to name a couple. The latter was the personal watch worn by Walter Schirra as the first Omega in space. The first spacewalk was done by astronaut Ed White, and strapped on his wrist is of course his Speedmaster 105.003. In fact, Ed White wore two Speedmasters to account for his current time and Houston time. It seems that even before we got enamored with these manually wound chronographs, NASA's astronauts already loved them first. NASA began to notice. When NASA asked James Reagan to gather a pool of watches that can be cleared for NASA certification, the Speedmaster was one of the few that were selected and the only one to actually pass all of the tests. The only complaint that NASA astronauts have over this generation of Speedmasters, according to Reagan, was the pushers breaking off from frequent use. Omega kindly obliged preemptively. It turns out that Omega already was developing something even before NASA approached them as a contractor. And by the time the new Speedmasters were ready to go into space, Omega was already moving to a new caliber, the 861, along with a new case with the crown guards and twisted lugs. These are the Speedmaster professionals. In 2019, Omega launched a new Speedmaster Professional in Platinum and Meteorite subdials. This one, however, is sporting the new Caliber 321. After years of absence and being bought by Breguet to use in their high-end watches, the Caliber 321 makes its triumphant return in a Speedmaster. This made enthusiasts speculate that a steel version will be available, and Omega, like clockwork, released the Ed White a year after. The new caliber 321 was a complete reproduction of the old 321 caliber. In the eternal debate of what is a homage and what is straight up plagiarism, this is one of the rare occasions that it is a homage through reproduction of the actual 321 components. To reproduce this movement, Omega had to make use of the original drawings from Lemania, reverse engineering of existing second generation 321 movements, and a tomography scan of Gene Cernan's actual Speedmaster used on the moon. The old 321 was based on the 27 Pro C12 platform that the Lemania 2310 was also built over as a foundation. This same foundation is used by Breguet, Patek, and Vacheron. Side by side, we can see the similarities in the structure between the old 321 and Vacheron's 1142. The driving wheel, chronograph runner, minutes recorded runner are all signatures of the chronograph that we immediately see. The balance cock also is not that different. What is different is that Vacheron puts on a lot more effort in finishing the 1142. Just notice the chamfers and striping are of course done in Geneva standards. The new 321 takes the same design ideals. This can be clearly seen when the new 321s are set beside the old 321s. The finishing on the bridges and mainplate are exceptional. The old 321s used copper galvanic treatment, while the new 321 uses a PVD treatment in Sedna gold. One unique treatment that can be found on both is the clutch bridge, which is still done in German silver. In the spirit of the 1863, which is a luxury finished version of the 1861, the new 321 caliber is finished with Geneva waves. Its latest 321 is only finished and assembled by one watchmaker. This further extends its uniqueness and exclusivity to a totally different level without being a limited edition. Unlike the current Hesalite Speedmaster, the Ed White is embellished with modern materials despite being heavily inspired by its heritage. Both crystals are made of AR-coated sapphire crystal. The dial side crystal even sports the Omega engraving on the crystal, like its older 321 models. The case is inspired by the original 39mm down to the smaller details. Omega didn't compromise with the lack of crown guards, just like the much complained about second generation Speedmaster. The lugs remained straight, instead of the twisting lugs of the Speedmaster professional line. Interesting to note also that the second generation Speedmaster did not have these lug facets. The original Speedmaster that Omega modeled the new Ed White from, as it turns out, had custom lug facets made by one of Omega's service centers. They produced this facet to look as if it was designed along the Speedy 105. The tachymeter is also a marriage of subtle homages, with its dot at 90 printing, and modern manufacturing with the ceramic bezel insert. The dial has the matte finish with a step dial profile. The markers are undercoated with super luminova to ensure that it will retain its color that already mimics the patina of vintage 105s. The biggest deviation is at the case back, which now sports a sapphire display that it originally did not have. This is a logical decision that showcases the new 321 movement. After all, going through all that effort to create a hand-finished movement deserves the audience to admire it. The packaging is also beautifully space expedition worthy with a NASA-grade case that houses a Speedmaster medallion, a loop, an extra NATO strap, an astronaut Velcro strap, and a strap-changing tool. This brings us to the point of attainability. Watch collecting is a peculiar undertaking where unattainability further improves the experience. No matter how frustrating it may be for a collector, when a desire is postponed, the more the desire grows. Omega has been labeled all sorts of things in its insistence of releasing limited editions. The Ed White circumvents this by shackling itself to truly limiting circumstances. It has the interesting story as the pre-Moonwatch timepiece, the uniqueness of the movement, and then there's the steep pricing. At $14,000, the Ed White positions itself above the Moonwatch crowd. Yes, it's not a limited edition, but it's priced just like one. The inevitable arguments about the pricing against cost is, well, inevitable. Can you blame those who formulate these arguments? Just look at how it compares against other special Speedmasters. Is this Ed White any better than all of these other Speedmaster offerings? If the pricing is the sole catalyst, then no to many of them. But it's almost never the sole factor in these emotional decisions. Beside the other limited edition Speedmasters, it's indiscernible that the Ed White is actually a special piece. The value is in the subtlety. It's as if this piece was plucked from 1965 and transported to the 2000s. With the actual Speedy 105 that they scanned and reverse engineered, you can pretty much say that they practically reproduced this classic with new materials and modern manufacturing. Is it worth 14 grand? To many of us, even without the 2 zeros on the price tag, is already too much to spend on something that's less accurate than most popular Japanese chronographs. To its target audience, the 10 grand connoisseurs, the Ed White may seem steep as well, considering a Rolex Daytona also retails at about the same price, attaining one notwithstanding. The current telling sign of the Ed White's attainability, however, is the growing waitlist. However unreasonable that price tag may be, there is enough people to fill a list of these pieces more than that one watchmaker can keep up making for. Paying homage to something of the bygone eras is a tricky business. Change too little and you'll come off as lazy. Change too much and it won't make sense, or the next best thing that makes sense, a cash grab. Omega has been accused of both. The Ed White seems to sit in the Goldilocks fence of those two arguments. No in-your-face gimmicks, no over-budget publicity. Just straight-up watchmaking efforts with the interesting story that's a precursor to the legendary Speedmaster Professional. A truly special homage with an special price.